So, it's been about a month since the ending of Darling in the Franxx happened, and after having all this time to digest and think about what the fuck happened within the last few episodes of that anime, I think I finally understand where everything started to go wrong and why it ended the way it did. So, without further ado, since you guys probably know where this is going just from the title of this video, let's just jump right into this, guys. I watched a lot of anime, and this is Darling in the Franxx. Where did it go wrong? Part 1. The Wasting of Potential. Okay, first, let's clear something up. Darling in the Franxx is by no means a bad show. Deeply flawed, yes. Filled with character decisions that make no logical sense, yes. Has a serious case of identity crisis near the end, so it doesn't know what it wants to be, yes. But I wouldn't call it a bad show, because if anything, the way I would describe my feelings for the ending is just disappointment. Since the anime actually started out pretty great and showed a lot of promise early on that this anime could become something great. I mean, sure, for some people, including myself, the characters in the show really didn't get good until about episode 5, but it still always did one thing from the very beginning that is critical for any good story, which was intrigue your viewers with mystery. From the very beginning of this anime, your mind is just full of questions. Where are we? Who is this cyborg old man? Why does this girl have strange pink hair and horns? With these questions leading to more questions. Wait, is this Earth? If not, what planet are we on? Is this the future? And if so, how far? With all this happening within the first 3 minutes of the anime. Now, mysteries are all about two things. Asking questions and then giving answers. And many other great shows and movies do this very well because writing an interesting and fair mystery into your story is crucial for your audience to feel engaged. Now, when I say a good mystery needs to be fair, I mean it leaves small breadcrumbs along the way that rewards perceptive viewers by leading them to the correct answer while not giving it all away. This way, the people who are truly paying attention feel rewarded for doing so, with their suspicions being confirmed in the end, and the people who may not have been looking so closely get surprised by the reveal, leaving both parties happy with the outcome. A great example of this that comes to mind is in the third Harry Potter film, The Prisoner of Azkaban. Now, one of the big mysteries in that film is that Professor Lupin is a werewolf, and one of the clues you get is when Professor Lupin faces a boggart, a creature that turns into whatever you fear most, and it turns into a full moon for Lupin. Ridiculous! This is a great clue because it doesn't spell out the answer to all the viewers. Like, if you weren't paying attention throughout the film, this scene really doesn't make a lot of sense to you. But for the people who were paying attention, this put them on the right trail that Lupin is a werewolf. With this scene also having the double purpose for all the people who weren't paying attention the first time around, to have that aha moment when they finally found out the truth, and they started looking at all the clues in hindsight to see how they all added up to this moment. Now where Darling in the Franxx goes wrong is that they have the first part of this equation, the interesting questions, but they don't have satisfying answers to go along with many of these questions. Now, of course, unlike movies, since this was a weekly show, they had the added bonus / curse of there being more time to work with when developing your characters and stories compared to a movie. But because of the nature of the viewing experience for your audience, they also have much more time to mull over and think about possible scenarios and theories that could possibly answer the questions the show portrays. Meaning for every 30-minute episode, the average viewer has around 110 awake hours to theorize on how the episode's problem can be fixed before the next episode even comes out. And the anime actually deals with this problem quite well for the majority of its run, with the high point of Darling in the Franxx being, at least to me, either episode 13 or 15, with both of these episodes giving climaxes to pieces of the story that pay off in a fantastic way for both types of viewers. With episode 13 finally paying off the 02 backstory that the anime has been hinting towards up until this point, by giving you a flashback of how this all started for 02 and by extension her connection with Hiro, giving us the viewers an almost complete understanding of why 02 is the way she is. And episode 15 finally lets present day 02 and Hiro reconnect so many years later, now understanding how much they each truly mean to the other. With the anime being able to balance developing each of their characters while at the same time slowly revealing more and more plot and world building as the anime goes on. That is, until the faithful episode 19 happens, where unfortunately the anime loses sight of what it wanted to be and falls apart at the seams as it apparently forgets how to balance the two and can't figure out now if it wants to flesh out the plot or the character development more. So it tries to do both while at the same time introducing a new and completely unrelated enemy, essentially uprooting almost all the world building it had laid down thus far, and in the process of doing so, all the psychological drama it was teeming with that kept most viewers really interested just vanished into thin air. So let's take a deeper look at the episode where everything started to go downhill. Part 2, Episode 19, How to Ruin Nuance. Throughout the entire series up until this point, all the world building was constructed organically within the story. Every piece of information was delivered to us in the form of something discovered by our characters or through dialogue. We, the audience, were thrown into this world without needing an explanation because we were discovering things as we went through the story alongside our main characters. Therefore, that is why this episode is so flawed, because not only was the information given to us in a non-organic way, but also given to us in a way that none of our main characters can know about it since it was all within a flashback. Additionally, the answers that were given felt like they were going out of their way to be sci-fi. Like, for example, they explained that the reason the world is a desert now is because of the constant mining of magma energy. And while yes, this works if you suspend your disbelief enough, why wouldn't they use something that already exists to explain this phenomenon in the world? Like, I don't know, global warming, which is already a big deal in our time? They could have simply said that because of the constant mining of fossil fuels, eventually global warming went out of control and pushed to the edge of extinction, the human race had to find a new power source to use as a way to save their species. That new power source being magma energy. A simple change like this would have made the story feel much more grounded in reality and would have made the antagonist much more sympathetic to us, because now instead of just being a group of big bad greedy scientists, they could be seen as saviors of the human race who were just trying to get by in a destroyed world. The second big mistake of this episode was the wasting of Dr. Franxx as a character. Up until this point in the anime, you had this character who was a mysterious third-party scientist who doesn't seem to be aligned with Squad 13 or with APE and Papa. Instead, he seems to be the only individual in the whole anime who has his own plans for the future, with us, the viewers, up until this episode only really knowing that he A, has most likely been around since the beginning, B, he's interested in Squad 13 because of their individuality, and C, that he tortured 02 as a child. That is literally just about all we knew about him up until this episode. Now, the problem with his backstory is first the way we find out about it, because again, there are literally so many better ways for us to find out this information than a non-organic episode-long flashback. One good example would be if 02 finally goes and confronts the doctor after remembering all the things he did to her as a child, and after an altercation where she tries to kill him for all the horrible things he did to her, he finally breaks down and reveals to 02 who he really is as a person, and why he did all those horrible things to her when she was just a child. Something simple like this would have turned a non-organic flashback into something that actually has ramifications in the story and could influence our characters going forward instead of being basically completely removed from the story altogether. Second, the backstory itself is too simple because, for example, after his wife dies, he doesn't really change. He still does what he wants to do. What if after his wife's death, he finally realizes immortality isn't worth it if we lose our humanity along the way? So he creates Squad 13 not only so humans can regain their humanity, but so one day they could become a rebel force against Papa's ideal utopia, which is where the entire story felt like it was leading to anyway since the beginning. This leads into the real core problem with these last few episodes, which is the conflict doesn't feel personal anymore, and the mystery is not fair anymore. There is this scene where Hiro tells Papa, "I am never calling you Papa again," and from here there's a scene where Torome, the most indoctrinated one of the squad, realizes that everything Papa said was a lie. These things feel real, they feel personal, but by making Papa this bodiless entity devoid of human morality, it makes it all seem so distant, so alien. This is what I mean when I say that the mystery in this anime isn't fair anymore. Up until this point in the anime, all the breadcrumbs led you to believe that the show will end with a rebellion arc, with Squad 13 facing off against Papa, with them maybe teaming up with Dr. Franxx and the Klaxon against Papa, and in the end there would be a big climactic fight between Squad 13 and the Nines over control. That is where this whole story felt like it was leading, but this doesn't happen. Instead, we get this completely out of nowhere third-party alien group that just happens to show up, and apparently has been controlling Papa the entire time, since apparently Papa was a tool for their ultimate plan of conquering the entire universe because, you know, we have never heard that plotline before. This is when all conflict and tension in this anime just died, because up until this random point, Darling in the Franxx always had this ability of making everything feel really small. Even though it was a big sci-fi story, every bit of the plot was advanced by interpersonal drama. By taking the smallness out of the story, and by making it into this epic huge space opera, you are taking what made Darling in the Franxx great, the drama, the bitch slap, the I'm never calling you Papa again, away. Because when you have Worm, Papa ceases to exist. He is not a person or any other type of individual entity anymore. He is now just this abstract alien race. Worm killed Papa metaphorically. His entire role in the plot and the importance of his character ceases to exist when his being is just his disembodied voice who has no real connection to our characters anymore. Part 3. The conclusion to the story. After this point in the story, there is no going back. No amount of backpedaling can fix the mistakes the writers just made. So instead, they just have to dig their own grave deeper and just dive all in on this completely out of nowhere plotline. This is what I mean when I say the story does not know what it wants to be. The show started out as a gripping journey through this dystopian future where we, the audience, slowly discovered what happened to this world alongside our main cast, with there also being a sort of psychological mystery subplot playing out in the background of all of this. In this way, the anime has a lot of similarities to a show like From a New World, where we, the audience, see everything in this world from a child's perspective, and like a child, we only truly get to understand this world as our main cast slowly grow up, and transfer from childhood to adolescence until finally adulthood, where we finally now have an almost full understanding of what this world around them is like. Just like in real life, where the older you get, the more understanding you have of a situation, because with each stage of life comes a new and different perspective on what is going on. But this is where the similarities between these two end, because while From a New World focused on this changing of perspective, Darling in the Franxx had their main focus from the beginning on the connection between 02 and Hero, with everything else coming secondary to this plot point. But even so, all this was still playing out in the background as we went through the story. That is, until this last arc, where up until this point, the connection between 02 and Hero seemed real and a part of the story. Now it became more of a crutch, something for them to lean on as the story went further and further down into the out of nowhere plotline, as if the writer thought, well, as long as we keep their love alive, technically the story is all still connected. When in reality it is in these last few episodes where 02 and Hero as characters die, because it is here where 02 and Hero stop being people or characters we can follow and connect with in the story. Because just like Papa, now they are just an empty husk of an abstract idea that only continues to move like a puppet on string, because this is the only plotline the writers haven't burned through yet that can still connect the entire story all together. Just like Papa, 02 and Hero didn't die in that climactic ending of self-sacrifice. 02 and Hero died the moment they stopped having real conversations with each other. Because all they do now every 5 seconds is say, I love you, and darling.
Daddy. 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 Daddy! 愛してる! 俺もだ! 02! 愛してる!
Since the writers just have to keep on reinforcing this idea because it's the only thing left after they basically threw the entire original plot out the window. In fact, the only thing that feels real and personal in this storm of random ideas anymore is the Earth supply with Pecoraro. It is as if these two stories are written by two completely different teams of writers, with the Earth plotline being written by people who had at least a vague idea of where the story was supposed to end, while the space opera plotline was written by people who didn't understand what Darling in the Franxx was trying to be. This is where it becomes apparent this story really was written by two different teams of people who had completely different ideas of where to end the story. And I guess honestly guys, I could talk and speculate about how this was probably a product of having this anime be a joint production between A1 Pictures and Trigger in the first place, and how each studio probably had a different team of writers working on the plot and how to end the story. So when it came time to finally figure out how to end the anime, the director Asushi Nishigori was caught between a rock and a hard place, since this was only his second time directing anime, and his first time directing an anime that was completely original, meaning there was nothing to work off for the plot. Not to mention, original anime are already not very common in this medium as a whole, so he probably felt an immense amount of pressure while directing this to make it good. So, since he probably didn't want to risk offending the higher ups at whichever studio had the idea that he didn't like, Knowing that it could affect his future endeavors in the industry he probably worked his whole life to be in, he just chose a simpler path by finding a way to merge both of these completely different ideas. Since to him, this might have just been the best outcome for all the parties involved. So he just merged the two ideas together to please both studios, but in doing so, ruined the entire ending of the anime for the viewers who were actually paying attention up until this point. Or maybe he did see the writing on the wall and brought these concerns to the higher ups before it was too late, but because it was a joint project between two studios, a compromise had to be found as a condition of the original contract, and this was the closest they could get, since the contract may have been made and signed by the two studios before the director was even signed on to the project.
なんか終わりに向けてやっぱどんどんやりたいことと圧縮されてやらないといけないことが出てくるので、どの辺までにクオリティを落とし込むかみたいな、もうちょっとここだけやらしてとか、ここだけちょっともうちょっと時間ちょうだいみたいな、なんか攻防が押し引きがもう胃はキリキリとし始める。
But again, honestly guys, I don't know. This is all just speculation, and the fact of the matter is, I don't know for sure anything. Since I wasn't in the meeting for this anime, I don't know what the writing process for this anime was like, or how they chose what went into the anime and what didn't end up in the final project, because like I said, I wasn't in the room. I don't know how hard it was to make a joint project original anime. All I know guys is that because of the decisions that were made regarding the last arc, made all the fair mystery in the series become lost, all the conflicts lost what made them great in the first place, which was they were personal, and the show by the end lost focus of what it wanted to be, turning it into a complete mess by the end. Overall guys, I don't think Darling in the Franxx is a bad show. I'm just disappointed because this last arc stopped it from becoming great. I think Fashikiro on Kousei put it best when he compared it like this. How weird would it be if in Romeo and Juliet we had it revealed to us in the last half that the Capulets were actually penguins in disguise, the police were investigating a murder of one of the background maids from the Montague's house, but we never found out what happened. We had a scene where we learned that Romeo's favorite breakfast cereal was Cocoa Puffs, and it turned out that Mercutio wasn't actually dead. Romeo and Juliet would still be a good story, but there would be a lot of head scratching in relation to all the other shit. That is pretty much what happened in Darling in the Franxx. So again guys, I don't know. I guess reflecting on how this anime crashed and burned so close to the finish line when it really had the potential to be truly great kinda just put the bad taste in my mouth. Especially since the only reason it failed most likely was because of corporate oversight and individual ambitions at two of my favorite anime studios in the industry. So yeah, if you're looking for a happy ending here, there is none. Have a good night.